Welcome. This is day 2 of a low back series that's been inspired by a study done at the Boston Medical Center for just chronic low back issues. There will be a beginning, middle, and end. The beginning will include several warm-ups, and they're not exactly the way that the study described, but it puts together the poses that the study has offered. So the beginning, we'll get on our backs, we'll do some warm up. We'll get on the hands and knees and do cat-cow. We'll stand up, and that's where I consider this to be the middle of the practice. So we'll stand up, do mountain pose, crescent pose, the chair pose, and then we'll get back down on the mat and do several back strengtheners and back bends. We'll end with a cool down that's similar to the warm up, but we'll hold a few of the poses for an extra breath, which tends to make cool down different than the warm up. Okay, so give it a try. Let me know if you find this helpful for your low back. Try to do it for several days, maybe even a couple of weeks, the same general practice, adding things or taking things away that are not working for you. Remember your self-study to ask yourself questions and see what answers might arrive at the mat for you. Okay, so what you'll need for the practice today, if you have them, a couple of blankets, and if you don't have them, it's fine. A couple of blocks, again, if you have them. If you don't have anything like that, you might be able to use a couple of sturdier pillows or couch pillows or something like that. So just get a few things, pause the video, go get your props, and then rejoin me when you're ready. Okay, so the first exercise I'd like to do is a restorative back bend. This was not in the study, but this is the way that I like to open all of my classes. And it's a supported back bend where we'll take some breaths and get centered and just do a little bit of self-study before we get into the official warm-up. So let's take your blanket, and you can use any kind of blanket. This is a nice wool blanket that's sturdier. And you roll it, you find the long end of the blanket here, and you roll it up from the long end. And I put this down lengthwise on my mat. And you could put a block up here at the top of it for your head, or you could take another blanket and put this at your head. So I'll do that. Okay, so I have a pillow and I have a support under my spine. Sit down at the bottom of the blanket and then just roll yourself back. Tuck your chin as you roll back. Just getting your vertebrae on that blanket balanced, your head on the pillow. Bend your knees. We'll put the arms out either at the shoulder height with your palms up, or down by your side, or somewhere in between. So just take a moment, settle in, relax the arms. You could close the eyes or just have a nice soft gaze. Tuning into your in-breath and your out-breath. Let's take a nice breath in through the nose and feel the lift in your ribs and chest and belly. Breathe out through the nose in the mouth. Start to let go as you relax. Take another breath in and send some love and compassion to yourself. And on the breath out, direct that love and compassion to the room, to the world, to someone special. And on your third breath in, breathe in something you want more of, an intention. And then breathe out an obstacle in your life. So I'd like you to take 3 breaths now on your own, 3 cycles in breath, out breath, and you can set an intention here. So something like breathing in, I am, and then a breathing out, happy. Or breathing in, I am, and then breathe out, content. Or healing, confident, something that might come to you. And focus on that for 3 cycles of breath. After you finish that third cycle of breath, take a moment for self-study. So just tune in. How's the body feeling? What's talking to you today? What's quiet? What are the needs of the physical layer of your body? Checking in on your emotional layer. How's the mind, the mental layer? Is it busy? Is it quiet? And just starting to be aware of all those different layers. All right, so we'll come off of this support, roll off to your side, and just push yourself up. And then we'll move the blankets out of the way. I'm going to unroll it and just fold it because we'll need it in a few more minutes. Okay. So let's lie on your backs with your knees bent. In the study, the first exercise was to hug your knees into your chest. So we're going to do that, but I just want to add on a little bit with the breath. Okay. So arms to your side, knees are bent, feet are on the ground. Take a breath in and reach your right arm up and overhead, and just give a nice stretch through that arm. And on your breath out, release your arm back to your side. On the next breath in, reach the other arm up and overhead. And on your breath out, release your arm to your side. So here's our add-on. Two arms. Inhale, both arms. Up and overhead. And then when you breathe out, hug one knee in towards your chest. On the inhale, reach your arms overhead, step your foot down. And on your exhale, hug the other knee to your chest. So you can keep going back and forth with one knee, or we're going to add on both knees. Take an inhale, reach your arms overhead, step your feet down, and then on your exhale, 1 foot at a time, but hug your knees into your chest. You lift 1 foot at a time, and that happens on a breath out. On a breath in, keep your hands on your knees and just let your arms straighten out. Release your knees away from you. And then on your breath out, hug the knees in again. So you can go back and forth, and you could be doing this just with one knee. We'll do it a few times, breathing out, hugging the knees in, breathing in, releasing the knees. Hug the knees in on a breath out, and inhale, release. And let's step the feet down 1 foot at a time. We're going to do that one more time. And again, if you were doing one knee, you'll want to switch, and now do the other knee. Okay. Arms to your side. Lift one arm, it doesn't matter which. One arm up and overhead. On a breath in, on a breath out, lower your arm. On a breath in, release your opposite arm up and overhead, lift it overhead. On a breath out, arm comes back down. And on your breath in, both arms. Lift up, overhead, good stretch. And now on a breath out, lift 1 foot at a time off of the floor. Hug your knees to your chest with your hands. That's your breath out. On your breath in, release your knees away. Breathe out, hug the knees in. And my hands kind of travel around my knees as I do this to however's comfortable. You can also have your hands behind your thighs. Breathe in. Sometimes hands just can't reach, so people do this without hands. Just a few more. Moving with the breath. It's nice to move with the breath a lot when you're doing your warm-ups. One more breath. Out, breath in. And then step your feet down. Okay, so the next pose in the study, the first pose was knees to chest pose. And the second pose is a twist, and they do knees in and then both knees drop over to the side. But I'm going to have you just do one knee twist. So straighten one leg. Let's straighten your right leg long on the mat. And bring your opposite knee in towards your chest. And put your hand on the outer knee. Reach over the midline with that arm. Take a breath in, and then on a breath out, let your knee just gently drop over your midline. And it can go just a little bit, or it can
go a lot. So the arm that's reaching away from your knee, that can be about shoulder height with the palm up. You can even look away from the knee towards that arm. And then come on back to center. Step your foot down. And we'll do the other side. So lengthen the opposite knee. The opposite leg now is long. And then bring your bent knee in towards your chest. You're going to reach your arm over to that outer knee. Take a breath in, and on a breath out, come into your twist with your knee over your midline. So your opposite arm, the arm that's away from the knee, reaches about shoulder height or higher. And I have my palm up, but you can play with your palm down. See what you like better. And then we'll come back to center and step your foot down. So pelvic tilts is the next pose in the study. Your pelvis is made up of two big hip bones. So you can put your hands on your waist with your thumb reached behind the body and your four fingers reached around the front of the body, right at your waist. And if you move your hands down the waist, you'll run into the top of two bones, and that's the top of your pelvis. And keep your hands here so you can actually feel the rocking of the pelvis. Without any breath to begin with, just press your spine into the mat. You'll slightly flatten out your belly or draw your belly to your spine, and there's no space between your spine and the mat. That's rocking the pelvis, the top of the pelvis back. And then lift the spine a little bit where it was pressing in so that you get some more space. And keep your hands on your pelvis and feel it rock forward. So you press the spine into the ground. It'll feel like there's if you know where your tailbone is, the bottom of the pelvis, well, it's not the bone, the bottom of your spine. If you know where that is, it tucks. Press the spine toward the mat and then release. As you lift, you get more of an arch in your low back. That tailbone, the bottom of your spine, that points down towards the mat. Okay, so let's add on breath. Breathe out as you flatten the stomach towards the spine. Press the spine into the ground, the pelvis tilts back. Breathe in, tilt the pelvis forward. And you can go small movements, or you can do bigger movements, or you can gradually go from small to big. So try to combine this with your breath. Breathe out as you press the spine in, tilt the pelvis back. Breathe in as you tilt the pelvis forward. Breathe out, tilt the pelvis back. Spine touches the mat. Breathe in, release. And go back and forth with your breath. You'll feel the whole spine moving because your pelvis and spine are connected. So when you're tilting your pelvis, it affects the whole spine all the way up to your head. All right, so let's get back to a neutral pelvis. So rock back and forth a little bit until you feel like the pelvis isn't rocking forward. It's not all the way backward. It's just in a neutral place. I'd like to add on one pose. The study didn't have this in the guide, but we're going to do just a hamstring stretch because that can contribute. In some people, that contributes to low back issues. So draw one knee towards your chest, and if you can reach your hands behind the thigh, we're going to put the hands behind the thigh. If you can't reach, you could do this without your hands, or if you have a strap, you could put your strap over your foot. So if you can clasp your hands behind your thigh and then reach the heel up towards the ceiling, toes reaching back, just for a breath, and then bend the knee. When I straighten the leg, my arms straighten out, I press my thigh into my clasped hands, and then I bend the knee. And we can add some breath. I really like to do that warm up. So inhale, reach the heel to the ceiling, toes are back, legs straight-ish, and the arms are straight. And on your exhale is when you bend the knee. And you could even give a hug in if you'd like. Inhale reaches the heel to the ceiling, and the exhale bends the knee. So you do this just a few times. On the last one, you could hold, if it feels comfortable, the sensation behind the back of the thigh, and just circle your foot in a direction around without moving your whole leg, and circle the foot in the other direction. And then I point and flex my foot a few times. And we can end hugging the knee in, and you can put your hand around the shin and step your foot down. Okay, we'll do the other side. So opposite leg, whatever you did, do the other one this time. Knee comes in, hand behind the thigh, clasp if you can, reach the heel to the ceiling on a breath in, toes back, heel up, right yoke foot. Exhale, bend the knee. Inhale, heel to the ceiling, let your thigh press into your clasped hands, get a good stretch down the calf, down the hamstrings. Exhale, bend the knee. So a few more with your own breath. Last one. You can hold or you could have the knee bent. Circle your ankle. And then circle your ankle in the other direction. Point and flex your foot a few times. Okay. And let's hug the knee into the chest. Step your foot down. So from here, you could, I'm not going to do any more on your back, but you could do this number 4 pose, stretch. You could do some windshield wipers, some additional twists. You could do both feet up. There's a lot of other things that you could do on your back. Choose an arm. On an inhale, lift that arm overhead. You're going to roll over onto that side, and the arm becomes your pillow. Your hand is down and in front of your top arm. And just turn towards the mat. Lift yourself up. Walk your hands down your mat. So I would consider that to be the beginning warm-up for a practice. Let's move into a middle section where we warm up the spine some more, but in a different orientation. We're going to do the cat and cow pose. And you'll want to kneel on your blanket. I just want to do a few wrist exercises before we weight bear. So if you can sit back on your heels, you can do that. I actually have my toes tucked just to give a stretch to the soles of my feet. You could sit on a block. You could do this standing. You can lie back down if you want. Okay. So table arms, just reach out your arms from the shoulder without pushing. So don't push. Just let your arms be straight. And the push, I'd like to come from the heel of the hand and just spread out your fingers. Just spread your fingers out and take a breath. Getting the wrists and forearms used to this position before we actually put weight on it. And then dial your fingers away from each other and see about dialing the hands and fingers down. And you can take a break if your arms are getting tired and rejoin when you're ready. We can pull the fingers back, all the fingers at once, or we could do one finger at a time. So just start with your index finger and your third finger, your fourth finger, your pinky, your thumb, and maybe all of the fingers. Okay, and we'll do the other side, so just take a break with your arms. Whatever hand you didn't stretch out yet, let's reach that straight forward and pull your index finger back. Your third finger, your ring finger, your pinky, your thumb. And you could do all of the fingers. So when I am warming up, or even into the middle, what I would consider a middle part of my practice, I like to really think about all of the joints. Even though this is a lot about the back and the low back, still be thinking about, well, what joints feel a little stiff for me, and how can I get both movement and some stretch into that. All right, table pose. We're gonna get into our cat-cow pose, where you come with your hands underneath your shoulders and your knees are directly underneath your hips. Spread out your fingers, and we'll do just a few more wrist exercises that I've been doing in my home practice. Shift the hips back, and I like to curl my toes under here. Shift the hips back a little bit and lift your fingers off of the mat and lift your thumb off. And then come forward into table, lift the heel of the hand up and feel pressure through your finger and your knuckle pads. Shift back, lift the hands, and shift forward onto your fingers. Back, lifting the fingers, and then forward, lifting the wrists. Okay, so keep the wrists lifted and just feel your fingertips, press your fingertips into the mat, and then gently lower your wrists. Have your fingers just spread gently away from each other, somewhat evenly. All right, so the cat-cow, we do pelvic tilts just like you did on your back. So try to focus on the pelvis and the hips and see if you can feel it coming from there. Nice, even, neutral spine, and then breathe in here. And on your breath out, tuck your tailbone. The pelvis is going to tilt backwards as you drop the head and round the spine. Try to draw your belly button towards the spine. On the inhale, you'll tilt the pelvis gently forward without overdoing it. So the tailbone lifts up, the front hip points come forward, and then imagine you're reaching your chest away from your navel. Stretch it there. And then exhale, start from the tailbone tuck, belly's in, the pelvis is back, and then the head drops. Feel that lovely wave. The inhale, the pelvis comes forward by lifting the tailbone and then stretching the chest away from the navel. You can even give a good pull back with your hands on the mat or a nice squeezing of the shoulder blades here. And then exhale as you tilt the pelvis back, tuck the tailbone, drop the head. Stay here in the rounding and now sit back towards your heels. You'll have less weight on your hands and hopefully you'll feel more of a stretch in your low back. And then as you inhale, come into your cow. We'll do that just a few more times. If the wrists are getting tired, you can stop at any time, or you could come up onto fists and point your thumbs straight forward. So you do your cat pose on the breath out. You do your cow pose on the breath in. Exhale into your cat, and if you like that add-on, sit back. Head heavy. Good lengthening through that low back. It should feel great. Inhale, lifting the chest forward. And then come back to your table. Okay, so that is the last part of the kind of warm-up or the middle section of the practice. With the study, they consider this next part still a warm-up. So let's come up. However you come up off of the mat naturally, you can come up. So they consider this a warm-up. I would call this continuing my middle section. You could consider the cat-cow to be like a warm-up still, or you could say, well, that is the middle part of my practice. I really like to tell stories with my practice. So I think that we're just natural storytellers, humans. Think about your practice as your warm-up at the beginning. Your main section, more movement, a lot more standing typically goes into a middle part of your section of your practice, and then you end it with a cool down. Okay, so let's stand in mountain pose is the next pose. So even standing, there's a lot we can do here, and we start first with our grounding. Looking down, let's get the legs neutral by pointing your kneecaps forward. And that may or may not mean that your feet are parallel and pointing straight forward. Just take a look at your feet. You may have fallen arches or bunions, or sometimes people are more on their outer feet, sometimes people more on their inner feet. And we just try to get an evenness there. You can try to find evenness by lifting all of your toes and feel the lift of your arches. And also feel the toe mounds. The big toe mound, all the way out to the pinky toe mound, and just try to get even there. Put the toes back down. And then feel some weight in the middle of your heel. So big toe mound, pinky toe mound, the middle of your heel. And we can do some pelvic tilts here. I'm gonna actually turn. It's very interesting. You don't have to turn, I'm just turning so you can see me. It's interesting to find your pelvis here. So hands on your waist, move your hands down and find your bones. And see, like naturally, does my pelvis tilt forward? I probably have a little bit more of a forward tilt of my pelvis, but a lot of people, they have more of the backward tilt. And, it's just interesting to see what your body is like naturally. So stay grounded in the feet, in the tripod of your feet, as you start to tuck the tailbone and roll the pelvis back, rock the pelvis back, and then release the tailbone as the pelvis comes forward. And just see what happens in each of those orientations. So when my pelvis is rocked forward, I have a big sway back. That can contribute to low back pain because I crunch here. And I get tight, really tight in the front hip flexors. And if I have a chronic tucking or even a pushing forward, I sometimes might feel too much pressure in the front of my hips. So my bone, my thigh bone is pushing forward in the front of the hip bones. And a lot of times it collapses in the chest too. So I have collapsing in the chest, and that also can contribute to pain. So we try to find the place where the pelvis isn't forward, it's not back, it's just in a neutral place. And then you want it right above your pelvis, right above your ankles. Lifting from the crown of the head, I like to go straight up to the crown next. So I'm really grounded and I'm even in my pelvis, and then lift the crown of the head straight up, which will give a lot of space in your vertebrae. And usually when you do that, that just puts the shoulders right above the hips. And we want generally the ear and the shoulder and the hip and the ankle, we want like a nice plumb line there. Chin is level as you keep lifting through the crown of the head. You can gently draw your shoulder blades together towards each other, just a little bit. And then imagine you're tucking your shoulder blades into your back pockets, which will put your shoulder blades that are on your ribs, it'll put the shoulder blade right on the rib. An easy gaze. And feeling the strength of mountain pose, the evenness in the feet, the neutral pelvis, the lifting the rib cage off from your hips. So there's grounding and lifting at the same time. The open heart and the strength. Lovely. So I'm going to turn to you so you can see the next couple poses. In the study, the next pose is a chair pose, but I just want to add a little bit of movement for your arms and some breath. So stay in your mountain pose. Bring your hands in front of your heart. It's called Anjali Mudra. And we'll take a breath in and reach your arms up and overhead. So it's a stretch from the bottom of the shoulder blades all the way through the tips of the fingers. And then on your exhale, bring your hands back down in front of your heart. You can do that again, or on an inhale, palms up, reach the arms out to the side, and then all the way up. And on your exhale, arms come back down, palms face down, and circles back into your heart. We'll do each of those one more time. Inhale, arms up, extended mountain pose. Exhale, hands back in front of your heart, Anjali Mudra. Inhale, arms out, palms are up. And exhale, we circle back to the heart. Okay, so the next pose is chair pose. We'll do the chair pose together, and then we'll add the arms into the chair pose. Standing in your mountain pose, we'll take your arms to shoulder height. Your feet are hip distance apart. Bend at the knees and let the hips shift back a little bit. You don't have to go very far. Feel an evenness in your feet, but a little more weight in your heels. And we can hold this for a breath, a few breaths. So we're in the middle part of your practice, and you can start to hold poses a little bit longer. And then on an inhale, we'll lift up. Maybe even reach up to extended mountain if the shoulders feel good today, and then hands back in front of your heart. All right, so let's add that onto the chair pose, onto extended mountain. If you have two blocks, I'd like you to find your blocks, and we'll put those blocks down. If you know that your hamstrings are a little tight, 2 blocks for your hands can be nice. Or if you need it to be higher, you can stack 1 block on its lowest height and the second block on its tallest height, and that will lift the blocks up even more for you. So I'll show you that way. Just have those there. We're going to add on a very gentle forward bend option. You don't have to do the forward bend option. You could just hold chair for a little bit longer. Mountain pose. Even standing in the feet, the tripod of the feet. Legs are neutral. Pelvis is neutral. Crown of the head is lifted. There's a grounding in the low body. There's a lifting in the upper body. A relaxed shoulders that draw together and tuck into the back pockets. Jaws relaxed. All right, so let's put it together. Hands at Anjali Mudra in front of your heart. This is bringing your opposite parts of yourselves together in union. Anjali Mudra. We'll start with an inhale. Lift the arms up and overhead. And now on an exhale, release your arms to shoulder height, bend at your knees, and come into your chair pose. We'll hold this for a breath. One breath in and out. And if the shoulders are feeling good, on the next breath in, push into the feet, lift up, arms lift up, and then exhale, hands can come in front of your heart. Let me show you the add-on. I'm going to go to the side, and you'll decide if this is appropriate, and if it's not, do what we just did. So the add-on, you'll choose which arms. Those arms can go out and up or to the front and up. And then we'll come through heart center with your hands, Anjali Mudra, as we come down. Bend the knees back. Bend the knees, release your hips back. We'll take a breath here, and then we'll keep going. We'll keep folding with a nice, look how neutral my spine is until I find my block. So if your head shouldn't be lower than your heart, osteoporosis, if you get dizzy, you would have a nice tall bricks with your knees bent. And this is your forward bend. You could maybe straighten the legs, see what that feels like, but you don't want to round the back, okay? So you keep the back neutral. And if you're somebody that you can go lower, right? You could go lower at the end, you can release the head, and some of you might want to straighten the legs. To come up, we're going to bend the knees, reach through the heart and chest, and come into your chair pose. And then we'll lift up, and then hands will come back to your heart. Okay? So decide what orientation you want the blocks. A little self-study. How is the back feeling? Do you think that forward bend is going to work for you? Or will you just hold the chair pose for a little bit longer? Or you could do 2 of the cycles of arms up into chair pose, and then do it a second time while we're down in a forward bend. So I'll change the orientation. You can have your blocks for one for each hand, and you can have them at the middle height. You have to learn about yourself, your own self-study. Okay, mountain pose, crown of the head is lifted, legs are grounded, legs are strong, hands in front of your heart. Choose your arms. Take a breath in and reach the arms out and up or forward and up. On a breath out, hands come down the midline, bend the knees, hips shift back. We're going to just pause in the chair pose. We'll take a breath in, just lift the chest a little bit. And then exhale is your fold forward or stay in the chair. So you can stay lifted with your heart and the head at the same level, or you can keep releasing down. See if that feels good for you. Some of you might even decide to straighten the legs. You'll feel it through the back of the thighs more if you straighten the knees, but it is a little bit harder on the back, so be careful. Bend the knees. We'll tune into the breath again. Breathe in and lift through the chest, arms to shoulder height. Pause for a breath out, and then we'll breathe in, lift up, and then breathe out, hands come in front of your heart. Okay, so let's add on. I really you can do any of these things just on their own. You don't have to combine the arms out and up to chair to a forward bend. You could just isolate that and just practice that. And some people really like to practice that way. I put things together a lot. I like to just feel that flow of putting things together. But in your home practice, you get to decide. The next pose is the crescent pose, and this is a nice side bend for the spine. Crescent pose, we're going to lift the arms overhead, and you can either lift them out to the side or lift them straight forward. Okay, so take a breath in, we'll lift the arms palms up, out and up or straight forward. And then turn your left palm up towards the ceiling with your fingers in, and then hold on to that wrist with your opposite hand. We can press into your left foot all the way through the heel of your left hand, and then breathe out as you pull yourself over to the right. A little bit or a lot, and then come back up on an inhale. Do the other side. So your right palm is up and the fingers are in. Inhale, lift, exhale, pull over. That feels so good from your armpit all the way down to your hip. Release, and your arms come down. So you could do that a few more times, or we could add it on. We're gonna plop that in and do just a little bit of that flow. So I'm going to turn and face the camera this time, and I'll do this time without any blocks, but keep your blocks in front of you if you're doing the forward bend and you need blocks to help you as you go down. So we'll add on hands in front of your heart, stand in your Tadasana, which is the mountain pose, even feet, lifted crown. Take a breath in and out. Can you find your intention? What did you create at the beginning of class? Okay, so together, let's take an inhale. Arms forward and up or out and up. And then right palm up, fingers in, hold onto the wrist, pull up, press down with your right foot, and then exhale, reach over to the left, crescent. Inhale, come back to center. Do the other side. Palm up, fingers are in, pull. Exhale, side bend. Inhale, come back up. Exhale into chair, so hands come down the midline, bend the knees, hips shift back. You can stay here. We'll take an inhale, lift the shoulders just a little bit. And then on your exhale, we can add on the forward bend if it's appropriate for you. Hands go down, the head goes down, maybe straighten the legs if you want. And we could stay here just for one cycle of breath. Inhale and exhale. And on your next inhale, bend the knees, lift your arms, lead through the chest, stand up, and then hands come back to your heart. All right, so that's it for the standing. In the last video, if you watched it, I did a twist with the chair at the wall, but I'm not going to do that. In the study, they say just pick a couple of these things, so I'm going to leave that one out. We're going to come down now. In the study, they considered this to be the yoga poses. They considered all that standing to be still part of the warm-up. But again, I would say that the standing, we've already started the big middle part of our practice, and this continues it. So however you'd like to get down to the ground, the next poses are all related to the back in back strengthening. Okay, so we're trying to strengthen a lot of the back muscles. You might need to put a blanket down on your mat if you are sensitive in the front of the body. So we're gonna lie down, however you can get there. And the first, the first pose that they have, come up. We're going to do child's pose. So if child's pose is uncomfortable for your knees or your hips, I have 2 blankets, I'm going to use them both. Then lie on your back and hug your knees in, and I call that the upside down child's pose. So you just flip it, okay? You don't have to do this part. But if your knees and hips are okay in child's, then you can bend at the knees and you sit back on the heels. Sometimes we keep the knees together and sometimes we spread the knees apart just a little bit. But however you do it, try to keep your rib cage supported by your thighs. So I'm here on my knees, on my blanket. My feet are actually off of the blanket, and that feels kind of good for me. And then you round the spine and place your forehead on the mat and reach your arms forward. And you want to focus on coming out, but stay down if it's comfortable. You want to focus on your tailbone getting heavier down towards your heels, and the opposite stretch through your forehead. So you get this rounded C curve in your back. And if you're somebody, you're not really supposed to get a C curve, like if you have osteoporosis in your back or kyphosis or something in your back, then you could do a child's pose more neutral with your forehead on a block. So you see how my spine is straighter and not, some people really shouldn't bend like this a whole lot. Self-study. If that pose hurts you in some place, then you have to self-study, well, where and what can I do, and maybe I need to flip it upside down. Or maybe you get your second blanket and sit, have your blanket in between your thigh and your calf, the back of your thigh and the back of your calf, and that can give some support if you had a big space there. Some people like that. And, or even a block back there. Some people need more support back there. So find a child's pose that works out for you. Start with your arms forward. Try to breathe especially into your back body. I'm coming out so you can hear me. Try to breathe into the back body. Tailbone is heavy. Feeling that roundedness of your spine. All right, walk your hands back underneath your shoulders. You'll push yourself up. And if you want, you're welcome to open up the blanket under you. We're going to do the locust pose. And the Sphinx pose. And then bridge pose. Okay, so come down onto your bellies. And you want to spread out your legs to be hip distance. Some people go wider. You have to see what feels the best on your back. You put your forehead down on the mat. Reach your arms down, straighten your arms and have them be by the side, palms down, fingers pointed towards the bottom of your mat, fingers pointed towards your feet, palms down. And then from here, we'll just lift one straight leg. So the front hip point of your pelvis, that stays on the mat, and you just lift a straight leg with your toes pointed back and then lower. Try to imagine that lift from the inner thigh and let the glute lift the opposite leg. Straight leg lifts and lowers. And go back and forth, lifting on a breath in, lowering, lifting, lowering. Do it one more time, alternating legs, imagining that you're lifting from the center of the thigh, the inner thigh, and lowering. Okay. So now let's try to lift everything. So I want you to draw your shoulders away from the mat. So squeeze the shoulder blades together. The hands can stay on the mat or you can lift the arms, but we're lifting both legs. We're lifting the chest, looking down your nose. Maybe lift the arms, just see which you like better, to lift the arms, but keep those shoulder blades towards the midline and then come down. So you can go back and do the one leg at a time. Or we could do one more where both legs lift. So in an inhale, lift the shoulder blades. You might even lift the arms, lift the legs. Stay really active and the legs are straight. Look down the nose, take a breath, and then release. Okay, so that might be enough, but we'll try the Sphinx pose. You can go back to locust pose if you'd like. So Sphinx pose is a more of a lift of the front of the chest. So sometimes it doesn't feel as nice for the low back. Let's see how it feels for you. You might need to spread your legs wider. Keeping your legs hip distance. And see about putting your elbows underneath your shoulders and look down at your forearms. Try to get them parallel to each other. And so you're supported in this very upright position with the chest reaching away from your navel. If the low back is not feeling very good, a couple things that you could do. One is to lift the low belly up a little bit. So you get a little bit of engagement in the low belly. So there's not as much of an arch in your low back. And see if that helps you. Another thing could be to just walk your elbows forward a little bit. Or you could go back to the locust pose that we did. So we're just going to hold this for a few breaths if it's reasonable for you. And if you're in this upright position, again, keep the back of the neck long. Don't look up. Don't poke your chin out. You can engage your legs a little bit. Sometimes that will help just to brighten up your legs. Squeeze your glutes a little bit. See if any of those things help you. And then I imagine I'm pulling myself forward. So the elbows draw down the mat, back towards you. So there's almost like a pulling forward that opens up the thoracic spine, the rib spine a little more. Find your breath. Okay. And then let's come down. Lovely. All right. So we need to come up. Just lift your hips up, walk your hands back, or however you get up. We'll do the bridge pose, and then we'll cool down. All right, bridge pose. You can do supported bridge pose. If you have a brick, I'll show you that. So have a brick nearby, if you block nearby, if you'd like to do supported, and roll yourself, tuck your chin in, roll your spine down. Move the block so you can see. So one way to do bridge pose, always we want to have the feet hip distance apart and pointed forward. And if you're just not sure about that, there's lots of things you can do with the bricks. I'll show you probably another time. But point your feet straight forward, hip distance apart. You want your thighs to stay parallel to each other. And then robot arms can be nice if you bend at the elbows and point the fingers up towards the ceiling, palms are facing in towards each other. Just kind of walk your shoulder blades down the body a little bit, down the mat. And step into the feet on an inhale and let that lift the hips up and engage your glutes to lift the hips up. And it doesn't have to be a big opening up here. And then come on down, roll down, roll down, roll down. On the next breath in, step into the feet strongly, engage the glutes, the knees, draw forward, lift up into bridge pose. And then exhale as you come down. All right, so you can keep doing that. Do a few more, or if you're having a hard time knowing where your feet are and what's going on with your legs, you could put a block in between your feet. I have the block. Let's see, I think for my body, I'm putting the block, the short end of the block versus the long end. The short end is against my ankles, and then I put the block on its lowest height in between my thighs. So you could do that. Lots of people really like this. So try that. Look, make adjustments. You can turn the blocks if you need to. Just don't have the knees dropping in together. You want your thighs to be parallel. You can come back to robot arms. You can step the feet in. So one thing that happens is you have to figure out where to put your feet in bridge. Some people put the feet too really far away, and some people put it so close to the body. You just want the sweet spot. You want the place where you feel supported as you lift up. We used to say that the heels should be right underneath the knees, but that's not always the case. Okay, robot arms, step into your feet. If you've got your block in between your thighs, you're welcome to squeeze that, and then take an inhale as you lift up, and see if you liked the blocks better. And we could hold here for a breath in. Breath out. One more breath in. And then come on down. You might even feel each vertebrae as it lowers and lowers, lowers. Maybe at the end you press the low spine into the ground again. Okay, and then release. All right, so in the study, now this is the cool down. Don't come up, you stay on your back, I'm just coming up. So the cool down consists of 3 different poses. We're going to do the child's pose on your back where you hug your knees in, or Apanasana pose. And we're going to hold that for a few breaths. And then we do the twist, and you can do the twist we did at the beginning. You could do one-legged twist, but I'm going to show you the twist with both knees going to one side. You could also do windshield wipers. And then they end with a reclined cobbler's pose, and then we'll go into Shavasana. So you might want blankets, or you might want your blocks, especially for the reclined cobbler. So hopefully you're still on your back. And the cool down pose is knees to chest, the Apanasana pose. So knees come in, 1 knee, 2 knees, and you hug. And we're going to just stay here for some breaths. You can keep the knees in and just breathe. Or you can rock your hips a little bit if you want a massage in the low back. You can also do some circles with your knees, keeping the knees together and just try to use your arms to do this. Letting the arms circle the knees kind of slowly, and you'll feel the inner rim of the pelvis where it connects to this bone called the sacrum. you can almost imagine that's like a dish back there, and the pressure as the knees go around in one direction, you're feeling the pressure on the outer rim of that dish. Okay, and then go in the other direction. And you could be rocking right now, or you could just be holding your knees, or you could step down at any time. Starting to cool down. Right, if you were doing the circles, maybe one more hug, like a seatbelt. How much do you want to hug those knees in? So as you hug the knees in and the tailbone tucks, like feel that length in the low back. That we're trying to get movement there. We're trying to get stretching there and twisting there and energy there and getting rid of all the blockages that happened in the low back. Okay, so let's step the feet down. That was the Apanasana pose, or knees to chest pose. So the next pose is a twist. So the twist could be these windshield wipers where your feet stay on the ground and the knees go from side to side. And you can hold, right? You can go to one side and hold for several breaths and go to the other side. And you can play around where you put your feet towards each other, far away from each other, middle. Or we can do the one that they suggested in the study, and that is having your blocks. And I'll put a block on this side because the knees don't usually fall to the ground. So I'm lifting the mat up with the block. And now I'm going to put this block on its, this would be its lowest height, this is its medium height, right in between my thighs. And then I bring the knees up, and you can keep the shins relaxed, or you can lift the shins a little bit. Oh, before we do that, put your feet back down. Shift your hips over to the right. I'm not mirroring you here in the video, so shift your hips to the right, and then lift the knees up towards the chest. You can either lift the shins or not. Arms go out to shoulder height. And then take a breath here, and on a breath out, let your knees, try to have them stay stacked. You try to keep your feet stacked-ish, and let the knees drop over to the left, and they can land on that block. And you can either, I'm having my left hand is on the mat, palm down, and my right arm is palm up. That just feels good for me right now. And then come back, step your feet down, and if you liked using the block, put the block on the other side. Now my hips are shifted to the right. I need to now shift them to the left. Bring the knees in, squeeze the block, trying to get my ankles and feet stacked. I'm going to open up this arm. It's my left arm. And then inhale, and on an exhale, let your knees drop over. I need to move my block a little bit. Okay. And so sometimes you'll feel adjustments happen in your spine. I just had an adjustment. And we can pause here. And this shoulder, we're trying to, have this opening here. If you're way off of the ground, you might need to put something underneath your arm. Or you might need to back off of your knees, like how far they've dropped down. That just might not be appropriate. So the twisting, there's a twist that happens in the top of the spine, and then right around the navel, there's an opposite, like a ringing, opposite motion, twisting. Inhale, come back to center, step your feet down. Straighten out your hips, remove the block. And so you can put pillows or blocks or anything underneath hips, however this will feel good. As we go into reclined cobblers pose, which is the soles of the feet together and the knees open up. And sometimes no props is fine, and that can feel good. We're going to hold here for several breaths. So a little bit of support. And play around with your blocks. I'm going to just tilt my blocks in a little bit. Arms out at a comfortable distance, palms up. And breathe. For Shavasana, so lift your knees up, You can straighten your legs and just have this be your Shavasana with nothing else. You can keep the knees bent, or you can grab all of your stuff. You can roll up a blanket, put it under your knees. You can cover yourself up with a blanket. So take a minute. I'm coming up just to guide you through Shavasana, but take your time getting everything that you want to be really comfortable. Shavasana can also be done lying down on your belly, or some people lie down on their spine, on their side, not their spine. Okay. So get Shavasana. Some people put their legs up the wall or put their legs up on a couch or something. I'll give you a moment to get into your Shavasana. And if you need to hug the knees in one more time, you can do that. Or anything else that feels like it needs to happen right now, do that. So take a moment as you start to relax and do some self-study. So after all of these suggested poses for low back, to relieve low back pain, how is your back? Was it hurting before? Is it feeling better? Is it neutral? Is there any other part of the body that feels different now? How's your mind? How are your emotions? How are all the layers of the self? Just without any judgment, just being open to see what's going on. Okay, so close the eyes if they're not closed, or a soft gaze. And start to let go. Such an important part of yoga is this part, experiencing the yoga. You've done yoga and now you're going to feel the yoga. Trying to really relax, let go of anything else except for this moment. Soften your forehead. Feel your eyeballs in the eye sockets and let the eyes just sink deeply into the sockets towards your brain. Relax your brain. Relax your cheeks and your jaw. Let your tongue settle into the low jaw. Really relax your neck. Feel the head get heavier. Feel the upper part of your spine and your mid-spine, and lots of awareness to the low spine, the low back. Try to relax all the muscles in your back. Drawing awareness and breath to those areas is a huge part of the healing process. And feel the front part of your torso, an open heart, love and compassion and acceptance for your journey. And feel your belly soften. So if you overgrip in the belly a lot, let it relax here. Let your pelvic floor relax. Relax both arms and fingers and hands. Relax your legs and your feet and your toes. Deep sense of relaxation through your entire being. Deep sense of wellness. Sense of connection, of union. Feel the yoga flowing through you. Stay just for a few breaths in silence. Please begin to deepen your breath now. Wiggle your fingers and toes and your ankles and your wrists. Move other parts of your body, bend at joints, stretch. Feel all the sensations of the physical body coming back to you. It'd be nice to bend the knees here and give one more hug of the knees to the chest, maybe a little movement if you want that.
then put your feet back down on the ground. Just push props away if they're in your way. Put your feet on the ground with your knees bent. And reach an arm up and overhead, whichever arm, right or left arm. Reach it overhead on a breath in. And on the breath out, roll over to that side. Roll over all the way onto your side. And let your shoulders and your hips and your knees and your ankles, let everything be stacked with your knees bent. And put your hand down in front of you. This is important for your back health. Your hands in front of you. You kind of turn a little bit more towards the mat, and then you lift up and walk your hands down the mat to lift up and sit up. Take your time though. So this would be a time, if you're interested in doing a longer practice than we've done together, this would be a time where you could add on breath work. I would probably do alternate nostril breathing in my own home practice here. Sometimes I do Kapalabhati breath first and then alternate nostril. And then you could sit for meditation if you're interested in meditating. It is a beautiful meditation practice to do after you've done some active yoga, some active asana. So I hope that you are finding these videos helpful, these low back videos. Again, keep practicing this general practice for a week or 2 weeks or even 3 weeks, and adding in or taking taking out things as is appropriate for your body and your experience. And as always, let me know what's working for you. What do you have questions about? I'm always happy to answer your questions. Okay, so let's take a seat together. Sit up tall. We'll draw our hands into our heart space in deep love, compassion, gratitude. Let's bow our heads, honoring the light, the goodness, the love in each of us. Namaste, everybody.